were in rehab this last year.
Yeah, last year.
You had like a breaking point, or
Yeah, I kind of was. There was just a lot happening at once, and I just knew that if I had continued down that path, that it would not be the outcome, and could very well be the end of my story. And I just, I knew that something had to change, and I didn't know what that was or how to deal with it, but I knew that being where I was physically and mentally was just not going to get me through anything that I was dealing with, and was not going to be beneficial for me. So I actually went to Nashville and entered a rehab facility and stayed there for quite some time and worked through a lot of stuff. And I thought rehab was going to be, oh, okay, well, we're going to get you clean and we're going to get you sober. But I mean, there was so much trauma therapy, and doing all of that with a clear head is completely different. I mean, when you're trying to work through all of this stuff, and also with chemicals and frying your brain, or getting into, with alcohol or drugs or something, you can't think clearly. And so when you're facing all of this totally sober-minded, it's a lot scarier, but also you have the opportunity to process it in a much healthier way, and to really work through it and not push it all down and try and mask it. And so that's what I was surprised with rehab, which I would tell a lot of people who think that, rehab it's very strict, and there's a lot of rules, and you have to follow it, and it's very militaristic, but it's, you got to make your bed. You got to make your bed, and you got to show up on time, and you got to lights out at a certain time, and you have restrictions, and you can't do certain things, and you don't have internet access, and you can't get on the phone, and you can't do so there's a lot of that. But what comes along with that is types of therapies that, and unearthing things that I had no idea was going to be part of the process in rehab, and it really helped a lot to be able to finally work through all of these emotions and these things without trying to mask them or numb them, and really facing them head on, and getting to the core of what's really going on.
You being a public persona, how much do you think the cell phone and the social medias are a drug for you? Like getting like this kind of detox, not only from the substances, but from your cell phone.
It's unreal. I
mean,
from
reading the opinion of people.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little difficult, because obviously you're missing your family, and you want to talk to people close to you and your family. But it is one of our counselors in rehab. And it was really interesting to watch, because we got our phones for 30 minutes once a week. And in that 30 minutes, you would see somebody who was doing great that week. They're really, starting to shine, they're happy, they're working through a lot of stuff. And just within that 30 minutes, I don't know who they called or what problem they had to face, that they were dealing with at home, or whatever. And they would come back just a completely different person. I mean, just angry. And it happened with me too, and with a lot of the people there and one of my counselors were like, if it was up to me, you'd never get your phone, because that's the relapse machine right there. And you realize, like, thank God we were in where we were, because you go to your phone and something triggers you, and you'd be right at the bar, or you'd be right, calling your dealer, or trying to get something to put in your system to mask it and get it, to deal with it. But where we were, we had to face all of it head on. And so I found it interesting that he would call those the relapse machines, because he's like, look how long
It's
it took you.
amazing.
You had that phone for 30 minutes. And now you're in here throwing things, and you want to get out of here, and you want to this and that. And he's like, now you see why we need to, like, there's a lot
Yeah.
to work through. And even when you're feeling like you're in a good place, it's very, very easy to be pulled back in. And that's, I think, even though I miss my family and using the phone for that, it was a blessing to not have internet access and to not be reading Twitter and comments and seeing YouTubes and videos. And and just being surrounded by people who had similar experiences, were going through what you're going through. And like with all of the counselors, people who have gotten through what you're going through. And so it was, I think that the phone and social media, and it's really hard for me. I mean, I have a lot of friends, and I say it too. I say it to people. I was at dinner the other day, and one of my friends takes social media very seriously. Like, if somebody blocks them, it's like the end of the world. And and I was sitting there, and I was saying, man, I wish that they didn't take it so seriously. It's like, it's not the real world. Like, if somebody why do they take social media so serious? And I just see all of my friends looking at me going,
Yeah.
Hello, I want to take your phone away from you. Listen to what you're saying right now, because you're describing yourself. And I'm like, and I stopped mid-sentence. They didn't even need to say that. I just stopped mid-sentence. I was like, I'm describing myself right now, huh? They're like, yeah, that's you. I'm like, oh man, because it will, you having a great day, everything's going good, and you scroll past all the good comments.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you're great. Oh, cool. Love your new song. Oh, we're so proud of you. Oh, what did this person just say? Oh my God. How do I convince them that that's not what I am, and that's not how I am, and this is what this person thinks of? It's like, and it just,
it
it's
changes.
poison. It's total poison, and it is. It's hard to not focus on those things.
Yeah, I identify with that. And what do you think is a solution? Like, not reading comments? Because I remember when we were having dinner last time, we finished the podcast, and you started using your phone, and your mood changed because you found something, or you saw a TikTok or a comment.
Yeah.
And I understand that feeling, because it's enraging to hear someone speak about you lies.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the solution? Like, don't pay attention, just don't read it, ignore it?
It's hard to say what the solution is, but I mean, the best thing for me is really to not look at it.
Yeah.
But
for example, for you, it's difficult because you're like this. You like to meet people. You like to talk to fans.
Well, I also, it's good to get feedback on what you're working on. It's nice to see people say that this song's really cool, and I'm excited for your new album, and what do they want to hear on the new record? And so it's hard to
close
just
that.
Completely shut it off.
I shut that off like a couple of years ago, because I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Yeah.
And I think like the good comments are a trap, a trap in a way that you start believing them.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
And you open your emotional door, and when the bad comment hits, it's gonna hit you right in the heart.
Harder. Yeah.
So I closed everything, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna focus on myself. And I think I've been missing some opportunities because of that decision, but I've also found myself in an emotionally more stable environment.
That's a good idea.
But I don't have like the perfect solution. But for me, which I'm also, I was never really that extroverted. I was always like really introverted. For me, that was the solution. But I don't think I don't know if it's the best solution. For you, what has changed when you got out of the rehab with your relationship with social media?
I think just not taking it to heart, just knowing that, and focusing more on the people around you than these faceless things that are happening on the internet. It's but I mean, it's a trap. You still get trapped in it sometimes, and
at the end of the day, we are entertainers. Like, we live for the people. Like,
and that's the tough thing. Is it's easy to tell, it's easy to say, oh, we'll get off and don't read. It's like, well, it's my job too. It's kind of difficult, but I do still fall into that trap of seeing a bad comment and it ruining my day, or having blinders on for only the bad comments when there's so much good. But like you said, I think that's a good point, is you can get trapped in the good, so that when you get the bad, it hits you even harder, and you're like, wait a second, I thought you loved me, and it gets, it's really strange too, because I had both sides of the experience of no social media when we were doing Drake and Josh. I mean, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Twitter, YouTube was brand new. People didn't even know what YouTube was for. It was just like posting funny videos, and it wasn't even no content creators, no anything like that.
It was just random stuff.
It's just like, oh, look at what this monkey did at the zoo. That's funny you said the zoo, because I was like the first viral. I think that was the first viral. It was the zoo, wasn't it?
At the zoo, something like that. YouTube. It had like 200 million views at the. Yeah, me at the zoo.
Yeah. Wow.
300 million views. This guy called Jot at the zoo.
That was the first. Yeah. That was the first.
18 years ago.
Upload.
One of the first. I think it was the first viral video.
Wow.
But it was April 23rd, 2005.
Yeah. See, that's the time we were making the show, and it was. I mean, there was none of this, And
there's an upscale version to 8K of this video
with 7.4 million views.
It's crazy.
But yeah, so we, there was no Mr. Beast, there was none of this stuff. So it's interesting to have been on both sides of entertainment.
Yeah.
Seen redes sociales and con.
Yeah, but it's also a good thing, because you have that precedent of knowing that social media is not the real world.
Yeah.
Like kids these days who grew up with Twitter already existing, YouTube already existing, they don't have that precedent of like, oh yeah, there was once a life without all these
exactly. Yeah, so
big applications.
Yeah, it's a noticeable change.
Yeah.
I mean, a noticeable difference. And I think in the mental health of a lot of entertainers too. I mean, because we would read something seldomly in a Hollywood Reporter, or in Variety, or in a news article, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's what we had access to. That's where we got our information and things written about us. We didn't have a comment section.
When you aired a new episode of Drake and Josh, what was the comment section like? Was it an article of a magazine, or?
Well, it wouldn't be episodic by far. It would be. Oh, they're coming out with a new season, and it would be some write-up in, I guess we had like teen magazines. I think that would be the thing of, but it wasn't, you weren't hearing the public response as much, other than being actually outside and walking the streets, which is what I should do more often, because you get on Twitter and you're like, ugh. But then you walk outside and people are like, oh my gosh, I grew up on your show.
Yeah.
Like, can I get a picture? And I'm like, why am I reading social media? I need to go for a walk.
Yeah, the thing with social media and Twitter specifically is that you're often reading the worst of people.
Yeah.
Like the way people interact with social media, because it's an outrage-fueled application.
Yeah.
They just want to create outrage. So they
totally.
just explode because they were having a bad day on the first person they see on the internet.
Yep.
And that's often what you're reading off. So you shouldn't take that seriously. That's because you meet them in person in the street, and they're usually pretty nice.
Yeah.
But that's like the worst part.
That's
of
their
it.
outlet.
And we all have outlets. Like the one I think something that I'm really thankful for doing creative work is that we have the opportunity to see our work manifested in the world, and that's kind of a catharsis or an outlet, because I record this interview and we're gonna see it published. So I can see the fruit of my work.
Yeah,
instantly.
It's the same thing with being in the studio. I think that's why it's so, you start with a blank slate.
And you see the progress,
and then all of a sudden the guitars are added, and then you're adding vocals, and you see a song, and it comes out, and then you leave the studio that day with something, finished, and you're like, oh wow, it came out of nothing, and now I've got this new song that's in the world now.
And that is a blessing because most people live their life in quiet desperation because they don't see the fruit of their work. Most people, their job is like to get some Excel sheet, add a formula, and then just pass it to the next step of the process. And they don't know what it implies, what it means, and they just do their job. So they don't have that catharsis. And some people find it in social media. Some people find it in sports. I play soccer in Monterrey, and I often see these guys who are really like into the game because they're trying to compensate another. That's why the phrase "get a hobby" is so popular because it's true. It's really useful to get a hobby. You express yourself and you get your frustrations out with your hobby.
I mean, that's why it's a blessing to have what you do for a job also be your hobby. I mean, I would rather be working than not working. I mean, obviously I like to take breaks from what I do and stuff, but really I would love nothing more than to be on tour and be playing shows or in the studio. I mean, I love being in the studio and creating and writing songs and producing and so it's a real blessing to be doing something that is also your hobby. And
do you quit drinking when you got out of rehab?
I mean, I've tried, and with this, with when you're struggling with things like this, I had 7 years sober, no alcohol, didn't drink for 7 years. And I mean, never even touched my lips. And it's really dangerous. And you learn this in rehab is, the relapse is going to be 10 times what it was before your stint of sobriety. So it's never going to go away, and it's never going to be something that you don't have to work on daily. I mean, but it's a daily thing, it's like, all right, not today. Cool. I'm going to bed and I didn't today. Great. But yeah, I'm working very hard and doing my best to, especially with everything that's going on, to find healthier outlets like Legos.
Legos are underrated.
Yeah, very, very. I didn't realize it, but very.
I actually have a really good friend of mine, a UFC fighter called Brandon Moreno, and he's a big Lego fan. And he also found in Legos this really exciting hobby that lets his mind wander away.
Yep, it's completely. You put some music on, you start building Legos, and 4 hours goes by, and you're like, oh wow, I've been really peaceful. I haven't had this flood of thoughts in my head, and I've just been able to just be at peace for the last 4 hours. And and look, I have this really cool little statue that came out of it,
And what's interesting is that ultimately, like this moment of bliss or of happiness or of being present is actually being present. Like that's what you're aiming for, like to be fully present. To don't be worrying about the future or about the past, because that's what anxiety is. Anxiety is like this distortion of time where something triggers you and you remember an event in the past and now your present is ruined.
Exactly.
When you get into this flow state, you're actually present.
My mom would always tell me, and I got confused when she would tell me this. I'd be like, oh, I'm having, I'm stressed out about this, or I'm thinking about this. And she would say, well, stay in today. Like, stay in today. And for some reason, I thought she was telling me, like, well, don't go outside. Like, just stay inside today. Stay in today. And, like, you won't have to deal with the world. And then finally it clicked, and I called my mom. I said, Mom, you mean, like, don't worry about yesterday or tomorrow. Like, focus on the present, right? And she's like, yeah. I go, oh, my gosh, I thought you were telling me not to leave my house.
You misinterpreted it.
I misinterpreted it. And so now, but she tells me that all the time. She's like, honey, just stay in today. Like, the past is the past. You have no control over the future. Just stay in today.
But it's so hard to stay in
today.
It's
very hard.
It's really, really
it's very,
hard.
very, very difficult.